innocent hope to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. I'm glad to be with you as always for episode number 280, coming to you on February 17th, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Good morning, Mr. Tanner.
Good morning.
We're going to have a guest in studio today, but before I introduce him, I just want to say we appreciate everyone's support here on YouTube. This is coming up Tuesday. I'm going to think by the time this is going up, we're going to have the morning show going.
Yeah, the morning show should be going.
Should be going.
And I hope some of the people are watching to see what...
You got to come over and check out the morning show. You know, we have labored along here on YouTube, and we just said, hey, come on. I mean, when you put up shorts, in time, we had more shorts that hit a ceiling this week. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's becoming a common thing.
It's really frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they got the, what do they call that, the glass ceiling? I call it a dog collar. We're in the dog collar. We're in the dog pound.
Yeah.
We can't escape it.
We only got a 6-foot chain. We don't got much on YouTube.
It feels like about two. What do they call those on the chain? There's a name for each piece of the chain.
The link?
The link.
Yeah.
No, it's not 6 feet. They give us one link.
Just one link.
My head's tethered to the ground. So we're going to go. We're up. You can come find us on. In fact, you should put it into the notes of the podcast, the link to the morning show.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be on Free People Radio on Rumble. We're not trying to run away from you guys. We're trying to find a new home for our show. So
we're adding content. We're not leaving YouTube. We're just adding. We're working harder, and we're working, and we need your support. So this is the deal. We pay for the expenses of the studio and for everything we're doing through TireGet.com. You can buy our tires at TireGet. That funds Free People Radio. Price is right. Service is good. We'll put them on right by your house. So please, 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 25% of you that are hearing this are going to buy tires this year. Good time to buy tires, by the way, is in the spring. In the spring. That's when we really like to go out and we check our vehicle. Oh, and Mr. Tanner, we want to get everybody popping on over to the freepeopleradio.com/store.
Hold that to your left a little more so they can see it on screen.
You see that there? Is that good?
Great.
Got it? We like this shirt because it's cool. It's just cool because, you know, when we say we're just right, we're not far right. We're just trying to be right. We're searching for truth. So we got the morning show going 7 to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on Rumble. That's cool. That is going to be a great show. I'm going to do that with Royce. Come on over. You can call in. If you want to, you can call in and you can actually appear on screen. It's really a cool deal. So we're going to do that. We've got this new organization, Free People of America, coming up so we can all be together in a community. What's the point of this community? Well, I'd like your opinion on it, but I'll tell you, one of the things I would really like to see us do here in Minnesota is reclaim the state from the Satanists and the communists and the socialists and the progressives and the liberals, which have created this mess that we're in right now. And people seem to like it, which is why we need really consistent, long-term, peer-to-peer interaction aimed at encouraging people to rediscover the essence of our country, which is self-governance. When people are dependent on government, they become demoralized. When they become demoralized, they become even more dependent on government. We have to reverse this by reclaiming the concept of self-governance. That's what Free People Radio is about. That's why we call it Free People. That's why Free People of America. And that's why we like to bring into the studio Minnesota citizens that I've met over many years of being political that I think are kind of reasonable everyday people. You know, they believe in God, they work, they raise families, they stay married, they do the deal like the deal used to be done before we became so postmodern. And I have in studio with me today someone I've met, known, talked to. I mean, it's going to be a lot better after this hour and a half. Mr. Dave Hughes. Mr. Dave Hughes is running for Congress in CD7. CD7, the home of so much chicanery and outright tyranny by the Republican Party of Minnesota. And Dave's been in the middle of it since, in fact, for all I know, you're the original gangster of the whole deal. We might have in studio. It's possible, because I want to know the story. Dave, tell us the story of Mr. Dave Hughes and CD7. I'm going to shut up and let you take it down. Take it upfield.
Good morning, David. Thanks for having me. I retired from the Air Force in late 2014, and for the previous 25 years before that, I had studied, the founding of this country, our Constitution, the founders, the principles by which our country, grew, and had this sense that I was called to serve in Congress someday, and particularly in the U.S. House. And so, in the summer of 2015, shortly after I retired, I told my wife, I said, I think it's time. And she said, okay, go for it. And I had no idea about the mechanisms of political office and how to run for it and all that, and especially the structure in Minnesota, because, being on active duty, I was all over the world and was a new resident of Minnesota. But I contacted the party leadership, particularly in the 7th Congressional District in the summer of 2015, and said, I'd like to run. I don't know how to do this, but please help me figure that out. And long story short, became the nominee in 2016, ran against the 28-year incumbent Democrat at the time, and got really close. So I ran again in 2018. And then for the 2020 cycle, my perception is that the party leadership and the party machine didn't want a political outsider to actually prevail. I was the only candidate, I believe, in CD7 history to run 3 consecutive times or 3 times at all on the Republican side. And so, in 2020, there were 5 of us. I was the front runner. And then Michelle Fischbach, who had been a state senator for all those years, 21 years, I believe, a city councilwoman before that. She was out of a job because when Al Franken resigned and Governor Dayton had to, he installed someone into the U.S. Senate seat. Michelle became the lieutenant governor because our Constitution requires that the president of the Senate become the lieutenant governor in the case of a vacancy. And then when that was up, she was out of the Senate seat, she was out of the lieutenant governor's seat, and so she was brought in to compete in that race in 2020. And unfortunately for me, I did not prevail. And here we are today in 2026. That's an all new world. The country faces some urgent challenges, and I don't think it's being met sufficiently, which is why I'm running.
That's great, because we were talking. You walked in the office and we just started talking about foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching, like, these people are running for national office, like Michelle Tafoya, and all she wants to talk about the fraud in Minnesota. And I'll tell you, it has nothing to do with their job. I mean, I guess tangentially, if the Senate was going to pass some kind of legislation about fraud in the states, or it could be involved, but that's not really why you run to be in the national. You have to have some insight into national, international affairs. It can't just be about your state, because when you become a member of the Congress, while you do represent the interests of your constituents, you do have a broader constituency to consider. Am I right? Or how do you think about that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And I think most people don't think the way you're thinking on this topic. They always say all politics is local. And I don't disagree with that entirely. But I think what happens is, in the error that most elected officials, especially at the federal level, make, is that they think that means, okay, my job is to bring bacon home to the district. And that's the root of one of the problems. One of my top priorities is balancing the budget. But how can you be doing that if you're bringing millions and billions back to your district, thinking that that's your job? So what you expressed is what I've held for a long time, which is, I want to serve the 7th Congressional District as their U.S. representative, but that's in the context of what's best for the nation. So if you have 535 members of Congress, 100 senators, 435 members of the House, and their focus is just bringing money home, well, where's the context of what's best for the country? And I would maintain that that's not what's best for the country. What's best is balancing our budget and doing things like that. And you have to keep both in mind.
When you win, you're going to go to Congress at a time where these are no longer just words. I mean, I've been hearing this since, about 2000 and Bush. In fact, Ross Perot talked about this. If you want to go back to Bush Sr. and Clinton and Ross Perot, that's 92, 91, 92. Ross Perot was saying that we have a unsustainable, debt-based approach to governance. And it's really an approach to money. I mean, that's what we're really learning is that money is created through debt. So the more debt, the more money. The whole thing is a scam. And it's going to come to a head. One of the things that, this is a thing that really bothers me. A lot of the people that run for office are stupid. And if you're stupid, you can be very popular and very good at aggregating an audience and very good at getting people to vote for you. But if you're really not educated about how things really work, if you're part of a machine that tells you what to say, that tells you how to dress, that tells you everything that you need to know to be part of the club. Because now, when you're in the Congress, you're in the on deck circle in the secret society to be really part of the club. I don't want to see anybody get to the Congress ever again that would join that club. Do you understand? I'm speaking in metaphors, but does my meaning make any sense to you of what I'm trying to say?
Yes, it does. In terms of, stupid people, I guess maybe we can get into that later, but the topic, we can delve into it a lot more, whatever you want to do. But on the topic of, the thing was just talking about, the balancing the budget and money and the scam, I talked a lot about balancing the budget in previous years. And I think what a lot of listeners and viewers perceive is that it's sort of an abstract issue and it doesn't really matter a whole lot. But what's the number one thing that politicians and folks are talking about these days at the federal level? I think it's the affordability crisis. You've heard that, right?
We covered it on the podcast.
Right.
Another scam to mess people's minds around.
Well, I think the crisis is real, but here's the connection. The connection is the crisis of affordability, or the concept of the American dream slipping away because things are just getting too expensive, whether that's housing and property or other things. It's directly tied to this issue of deficit spending. The federal government, by being irresponsible and creating all this debt and overspending year after year after year, David, that is directly the cause of this affordability crisis. And that's one of the reasons why I'm right.
We played, what was the name of that? Brendan Boyle. We played back, like, I don't know, a couple, 2-3 episodes ago. He's the he's the senior Democrat on the House Ways and Means Committee.
Okay.
And he was pounding this affordability and Trump, pounding it. And I looked up his votes. He never saw a debt ceiling increase that he didn't vote for. And he actually sponsored legislation himself to suspend the debt ceiling. And then they run this guy out there and he's talking about affordability. And I'm thinking, man, what a weasel. What a weasel, because it's such a lie. So this is why I'm excited to have you in. I don't know you that well. Actually, I know we've had Dave's wife, Amanda, on the show before. I actually know Amanda better than I know Dave, but I have the sense that these are principled people. And when I say the club, just because you get elected to the Congress doesn't mean you get on the inside track.
Right.
They check you out. They check under the hood. Like they've been trying to stop you for a long time. And when they try to stop somebody, and I know there's some stories here, when the weight of the party vilifies, demonizes, and divides, it's because it's afraid that, we don't want that getting into the system. And, we've got that here at Free People with Royce. They don't want Royce White in there because he's trying to search for truth. And I get a sense that you ran into some of that in your political career. Am I wrong about that? Or wasn't there some warp and woof around you at the party?
Oh, no, you're not wrong. I've faced opposition and, one of our leaders here in Minnesota talks about liars, losers, and cheaters. Well, that's what many in the party, in the Republican Party of Minnesota, have done to me over the years. Instead of just facilitating a fair, open process, recent former state party chair himself, pulled out the stops and used all of the tools of the party to cheat and benefit an opponent of mine in the 2022 state Senate race, for instance.
As a matter of fact, I think he's running for Senate, that guy.
He is.
His name's David Hand. I call him the Hand Man.
That's right.
I got a great kick out of him when Royce got the endorsement at the convention in 24. He was walking down the stairs and I was walking up. I couldn't resist. I just looked at him and said, "How's that feel, David?" Because he'd hired Michael Broadcorp to trash Royce White, and I got trashed by just hanging around. So here's our party, the party that we give our time to as volunteers. Some of us actually give it money. Really, it's like you people represent, you're not ruling over us. We elected you to represent us. And I've reached this point too. I don't even have to like anybody anymore. I'm just looking for aligned interests. So our interests are aligned, right? Like we don't want to see the state be communist. I mean, that's kind of an aligned interest. We don't want this. What can we agree on? And this guy actually hired and hid it from the governing elected people in the party, hid it that he hired a guy to trash and he trashed Steve Boyd up in your backyard also. I think Steve Boyd was running in 24 and this broadcast. So the party actually, and you're listening to me in the party, I'm not letting you people forget this. Why? Because a lot of the people that were behind this scam are still party officers. Now, you guys want to cover that up, but I know who you are.
Do you need tires? Go to tireget.com, TIREGET.com. The link is down in the description. I don't know about you, but I don't like waiting in a tire shop or talking to a salesman. TireGet makes it so easy I can order the tires right from my couch. Seriously, it's one website, a few clicks, and the tires are delivered right to your installer. You drop off your car, and boom, your tires are on. Plus, you get to support Free People Radio. So not only do you get tires, but you also get to support your favorite show. We'll even throw in an extra little deal. Just enter promo code FPR in the checkout for an extra 3% off.
I know who you are. I know where you sit, and I know who you work for. And you orchestrated a process where party donor money paid for outside influencers, and not just one, to trash endorsed candidates that the delegates had voted for. So the people who are the party said, these are our standard bearers, and the party that they are part of trashed them. And then the one guy, Broadcorp, I don't know if you know this, maybe you do know it. He came out as a Republican for Harris Waltz. It's like, okay, we got some problems now to solve. I mean, we've left the aligned interest area and we're into, there's a group of people in a club, they have their own interests and they don't care about anybody else. And that's not Republicans. See, Republicans care. They want to treat others the way they want to be treated. It's part of being a Republican. So I've heard some. I would just like, if you will, maybe you don't want to because you're running. If you don't want to, just say, that's all the past. That's cool. But I know there's some egregious things that happen to you. And I don't think everybody knows it. And if we're going to fix this, if you don't want to do this, just say it's the past. I'm giving you an off-ramp. But I know you got abused. You suffered tyrannical behavior. At least that's the rumor on the street. Is it a rumor or is there truth to it?
Well, there's a lot of truth to it. The 2016 and 2018 races were clean as far as I was concerned and as far as I could tell. We had, U.S. Representative Colin Peterson, Democrat, former chair of the House Agriculture Committee, so king of agriculture, a blue dog Democrat from the early 90s, pro-life and pro-Second Amendment, at least publicly, those were his positions. So for Republicans in Western Minnesota to knock off a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment Democrat, that was tough. 2020 was when it got evil. So I was the front runner in 2020. We had three other gentlemen that were competing with me. Former state senator Michelle Fischbach got into the race last. She was the last of the five competitors.
And she was a state senator from up in the Moorhead area? Is that where?
No, she's from Stearns County,
Okay.
kind of near Wilmer and
Okay.
Paynesville in particular.
And people, if you're
Yeah.
from out state or in another state or another country, this congressional district 7 we're talking about is a very large the geographics of this is a very large district.
39 counties. It's the size of the state of South Carolina. And other than some of the states, that are, a congressional district because it's an entire state, such as North Dakota, Wyoming, and the such. Aside from them, it's the largest congressional district geographically in the whole country.
So you had four people, and then she entered late.
She entered in September of 2019, And from the go, things got nefarious and have gotten worse ever since, which relates to, I think, something you talked about, which is or maybe we'll talk about it more, which is all the nonsense going on currently in CD7 and which has been developing since Michelle came on the scene.
Well, so really the rut where this thing started to go strange in CD7 was the year there was 4. This is 2020.
Correct.
And then Michelle came in. And since that time, we've had the otter tail thing up there. And
right.
I mean, so all of this is really related.
Yes.
And that's why I said I think you might be the original gangster on this deal. I mean, really, there was a reason why but when you talk about Michelle Fischbach, and I'm going to let you talk about her because I don't know her. I know Noreen very tangentially. I don't know these people. I'm down here in CD3. And when you say things are local in nature, we have to work on our own precincts. I mean, we just had caucus. My sense is that the rumor around the campfire is more people showed up. Tanner's a delegate. Isn't that cool?
That's great.
Yeah, a young man like this, it's unbelievable. And, he just did it. I mean, I didn't drag him there. He just said, okay, fine. But, I went. I didn't see any more people in my Senate district, but maybe they claim there were. I'm going to say there are not enough new people to move the needle, in my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong. So when I say I don't know what's going on in 7, it's because I'm really focused on 3, because 3 is a disaster also. I mean, really a disaster. So up in CD7, what's going on up there? Because, the PR on Michelle Fischbach is she's the most MAGA, most conservative. I mean, conservative in a not neocon conservative, but like the most just patriot, Trump supporting. She's just wonderful. That's we're down here, the press that we get down here. We don't, and I look at everything that's going up in CD7, and I'm, I know Brett Bussman. I mean, I know what's going down up there. I'm going, what the hell is going on? Why is there this opposition to this Trump-endorsed, allegedly patriotic, fantastic, the best? That's how she's pitched to guys like me. What's going on?
Well, I think there's 2 issues, David. First of all, there's the party nonsense. As I mentioned earlier, everything was fine in 2016 and 2018. My relationship with the elected party officers of CD7 and I had very little interaction with the state party in those 2 cycles, but it was all good. It was all open and transparent as far as I could tell. The problem is that since 2020, when Michelle Fischbach ostensibly or allegedly won the endorsement in May of 2020, is that ever since then, both she, by failure of leadership, and the elected party officers of CD7 have been consolidating power and doing things to defend her. And that's the problem. So when you hear of people in Ottertail and others around, maybe the grassroots types or the liberty lovers and that sort of thing, when they express opposition to Michelle, despite all these accolades that you just mentioned, it's because of what they've seen, what they've witnessed, and what's happened to them. I mean, there was stuff going on in 2021 and 2022 in Clay County, in that BPOU there. There's been the stuff going on in Ottertail County since 2020.
Was the Clay County thing, was that a dude named Edwin Hahn in the middle of that?
Edwin Hahn, yes.
I know Edwin.
Yes.
And Edwin's still fighting that fight.
Right.
Okay. So there's something very strange going on up there. Let's just say that I can't get into these people's heads, but I will comment that by 2020, we had President Trump. We had a new movement in the Republican Party, which has become ideologically confused now, and it needs to reconfigure itself. You call it, American nationalism, America First, or MAGA. I don't know what it'll be called 100 years from now, because it's still it goes back to the Tea Party. I mean, these are people that are regular, everyday citizens like you, a long military career, a career of service, and you just decided, I'm called to do this, which I think a lot of military people are, because it is service. So there's this group of people, and I'm in that group of people that have come into the party, and I go, did you just lie to me? I mean, that's where it started for me. I mean, it's like I was stunned that conduct of the people. Because I'm in hardcore business, and I've been in it for a long time, and I'm used to a lot of warp and woof. But I went into the party with this belief that, okay, we had some principles,
Right.
like the Party of Lincoln. And when I found out that these people had no principles, well, there's a lot of people like me that have figured that out now. And so now we have a problem in the party. We all have the aligned interests of allegedly being under the Republican tent, but we have a group of people that are in one camp, and we have a group of people in another camp, and that division is becoming stronger, more intense, in my opinion.
Well, it is. And, some people laugh this off, David. Some people in the party laugh it off and pretend that it's just a personality dispute, or you like chocolate ice cream and I like vanilla ice cream, just something insignificant. But it's much more serious and much more basic, which is lying and cheating. And that's why the grassroots that's why the party is so divided in the 7th congressional district, and why you see so much opposition from the grassroots, is because people on the other side you said they have no principles, and that may be true, but I say they do have principles, which is power only. There's nothing about transparency. The problem could be solved really easily if the party leadership was simply committed to transparency and fairness and facilitating an open process. Michelle Fischbach, for all of her supporters, if she was as great a member of Congress as her supporters say she is, then you wouldn't need the party leadership doing all these things, all these maneuvers, to benefit her and help her remain in office. They would simply say, "Hey, we love our congresswoman. She's great. So let's run a fair and open process and see how the competitors do." They don't do that, David. Instead, they connive and cheat and do all these things.
Connive and cheat. Alex Plechash, I served on a board with him for 2 years. He's the chair now.
Yeah.
Before you declared, he sent. I got a letter from him on the letterhead of the Min GOP where they endorsed her before there was even a political season. I mean, I was like, okay, now, anybody that supports this, really, I've reached a point, Dave. I mean, I know the podcasts are supposed to be smooth, and I know you're trying to, I'm just going to let it out. I'm so in opposition to this. I don't want to say I'm disappointed. I don't want to say I'm dejected or demoralized. No, I oppose this so firmly because I think your point's very good. They have principles. They just don't have Christian principles, or they don't have Republican principles. They have a set of principles that are related to something that I really detest. And so I will fight against that until my last breath. And there's more and more people like me coming in. Now, will we get sufficient numbers in to defeat this evil? And so I have you down here. Now, I'll have other people in. If other people want to come down that are running from CD7, if Michelle Fischbach wants to come in, she's more than welcome to come in. She's not going to come because we're alternative media. What we're doing is this alternative media is growing, and it's informing more and more people of things that they don't see on Fox News. You're not going to see on Fox News that the hierarchy of the party, the same party that's now pushing Michelle Tafoya on everybody, is corrupt, venal, self-interested, disconnected from the citizens that they're supposed to not represent, serve, because we're talking about a political party. You take an office in a political party, your job is to serve. It's a little bit like the military. Without the military consequences, juniors respect seniors, seniors serve their juniors. I mean, that's the only way the thing works.
Right.
Not in this party. I actually had Alex Plechash tell me, your job is to lick envelopes. We don't talk about politics here. When I first came in and I looked at him, I said, what? So I called my podcast for you. It took me a long time to get the courage to call these people out by name, but I used to call him, Mr. We don't do that here. Because he told me we don't do politics. I'm thinking, why am I on this BPOU if we never talk about politics? So the thing is just wrong. It's just wrong. And I understand why they think the way they do. It's hard to represent strong-willed, independent, self-governing free citizens. It's a lot easier to get sheep and herd them into a pen, and if they get out of line, execute them. That's a lot easier. I get it, but I don't agree with it. I just don't. If the sacrifice is my freedom and my self-governance so somebody can rule, oh no, we're taking that son of a going down. That's how I feel about it. So you're here. Anybody else wants to come in from CD7, they're welcome to come in, because when we do the interview thing, I try to be giving you a platform to say what you believe, which we're going to get to. And I want them all to come down. We want to make Free People Radio a center for this kind of dialogue. But, they're not going to come, because if they lie to me, I'll know they're lying, and I won't let them off the hook for it.
Can I give you a recent example?
Please.
I hope that U.S. Representative Michelle Fischbach will come to your show and be on here for the full length of it. There was a recent incident where a gentleman, I know him personally, from Norman County, which is in the 7th Congressional District, and particularly in Senate District 1, which is where I live. Michelle was on talk radio recently. It was a few months ago. And this caller called in and asked her if she knew about. He simply asked if she was aware of this division in CD7. She said twice in that interview on live radio that she was unaware of it. Not that she was aware of it and didn't know the details, or I'm aware of it, but I'm trying to stay out of it. She said that she was unaware of it. The problem with that is, and you mentioned,
I feel anger rising in my body.
Well, and me and two other activists whom you've had one of them on your show not too long ago, Merle Hexam. We got on the radio a couple days later, and we told the host that had hosted her, look, we know her. We know who her lieutenants are. There's no conceivable way she doesn't know this. You mentioned the name Noran recently, a few minutes ago. Noran's job is to keep Michelle apprised of what's going on in the 7th Congressional District. So for her to say on live radio, for Representative Fischbach to say on live radio that she is unaware of the division and of the effort to remove Brett Bussmann is just a flat out lie.
Let's give her a stair to walk down. I'm going to give her another cat. Ready?
Yeah.
Dementia. She's got two options on this deal. Sure. I mean, because she does know.
Yeah.
Of course she knows. And then the willingness to lie on talk radio like that. And I'm going to say to everybody, I'm first of all, when I was younger, I lied. Learning how to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have kids, they lie. Did you break that vase? No. Okay, that's how you learn. And sometimes I repeat things that aren't true, and I feel bad about it. But, I have a premium on, making things clear and trying to be transparent. We're going to get into this too. We were talking about other cultures that don't have mechanisms for redemption. We do have a mechanism for redemption. So actually, I hold out the hope. This is my hope that in this moment of great change and great peril, some of these people will drop their bags and actually discover republicanism. And that's what I did. And I say that because I voted for both George H.W. Bush and George Bush, and I was very happy with both of them until the weapons of mass destruction weren't found. And then because I knew I knew the whole underpinning of the thing going back to the Gulf of Tonkin. But, I was a Republican, and I just said, well, okay. And then I woke up and I said, man, these people are completely full of shit. And we can't ever aggregate a healthy, just, and moral, population if the leadership is going to make sure that that doesn't happen. But we were just talking in the lunchroom before we came on. All they do is reflect who we are. This, we're kind of caught in a trap. So what we do on the podcast, and it's really about each individual citizen. Like you have a military training, I would assume from knowing your wife, you're Christian. I mean, you have some principles that you're living your life by. And it's not just about acquiring power. And I should ask you before I make presumptions, why? Oh, why would you want to run for Congress in 2026? And really, I'm going to just tell me why. What motivates you? Why are you doing this?
I'm doing this because I think our nation is headed in the wrong direction. Despite the fact that we have the trifecta at the federal level, or the quadfecta, some folks would say. We have both the House and the Senate. We have the White House. We have a conservative majority on the Supreme Court. But our country is still going in the wrong direction. One of my number one legislative priority, David, going forward is balancing the federal budget. Do you hear Speaker Johnson or Leader Thune or anybody talking about the topic, much less proposing a blueprint, much less in an urgent fashion? You have to go back literally a quarter century to Newt Gingrich in the spring of 1995. you had the Republican Revolution that won both the House and the Senate in the fall of 1994 for the first time in 40 years. Prior to that, they had not won both the House and the Senate. So that was a revolutionary period, 30
I
plus.
think the House was since 33.
Yeah.
I'm saying since Roosevelt.
Right. And so they won in 1994. They entered in the spring of 95. And Newt Gingrich, if you remember, he had his 100 days. He said, we're going to balance the budget. It took him 3 years. It was the summer of 1998 when they were able to declare that we have balanced the budget. So it took them all of 95, 6, 7, and half of 8. So 3.5 years. But they balanced the budget, and then they did it for 4 years, and we haven't done it since 2001. And it's a critical issue that nobody is talking about and nobody is emphasizing, especially not in leadership. And that's why I'm running. I mean, there's a bunch of other things, but balancing the budget, paying down the national debt, Social Security and Medicare, David, they are collapsing. They are deficit spending right now. And then finally, my fifth legislative priority is ending abortion in America. Reversing Roe v. Wade was wonderful. That was maybe a first step, but we still are murdering our unborn children, and I am not content with that. Saying that, hey, we're going to leave that to the states. I'm not cool with that.
I want to make sure I understood this. Did you say it was your fifth priority? I mean, was there
just not necessarily in order?
Because I heard you say a great fiscal responsibility of our government.
Yeah.
And then we went right to life.
Right.
Those are the two primary drivers?
Balancing the budget, right-sizing the government, which
it's the same thing.
Well, it's sort of step 2. I mean, if you could balance the budget, let's say that our economy was growing at 6 or 8 or 10% per year, which it's not, and it's not going to. You would get so much more tax revenue that you could balance the budget by the increased tax revenue from the growing economy, and that's how politicians tend to do it and tend to prefer it. Step 2, then, I'm not content with that. I mean, we have 3 million civilian federal employees in the federal government, and it's taking up anywhere from 20% to 25% of our GDP. I mean, you think about this great, big, beautiful country of ours, 340 million people, this vastly complex society, and 1 in every 4 or 1 in every $5 that's generated by that society is going to the federal enterprise.
In that number, are you including the health care? Is the health care in that?
Yes.
Okay.
So Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all that
and
stuff.
what percentage of the GDP are you saying you think that is?
Well, the projection for 2026 is 31.9 trillion, so almost 32. We'll call it $32 trillion for our GDP. The projected federal spending this year is 7.2, I think, or 7.6. I wrote it down.
So it's more.
So it's 20 to 25%. So I mean, I'm not content with just balancing the federal budget. Then you have to do the next step, which I call right-sizing the federal government, which is to dramatically reduce it.
Where would you start? Let's say, because you know how this is going to go down. It's going to go down one way or the other.
Yeah.
We're either going to do it proactively or reactively. And I talk to these leftists that are into this modern monetary theory thing, and people believe that this can just go on because they've been brainwashed in the academic institutions to believe that governments with fiat currency can write debt forever without consequence. And these academics are all Marxists.
Right.
And they've all set up a whole generation of educated young professionals with an idea that is intentionally false. They're Marxists. They lie at the universities. No, we can do this forever until we're going to take all your things away from you because your things are the collateral for the banks. So let's say some miracle happened and it was balanced, because it's going to happen one way or the other. Where would you go into the government? What would be your first step when you talk about right-sizing the government? What's step 1, step 2? Where do you start?
Well, you would start by, I would have my staff in DC help me to flesh all this out, but you have to look at the structure of the federal government. We have 15 U.S. departments and 220 plus agencies, bureaus, commissions, and so forth. And all of those are fantastically expensive by themselves and, of course, when you add them all together. So I would start by abolishing entire U.S. departments. 4 off the bat that I can name that are easy, shouldn't be controversial at all in the Republican Party, are education. We didn't have a Department of Education until the summer of 1980. And people, when you mention abolishing education, they're like, oh, you don't care about education. No, I care a lot about it. But I'm historically knowledgeable that we didn't have a U.S. Department of Education for the first 206 years.
It was Carter administration when it started, right?
Right. Carter authorized it in 79 or signed a bill that authorized the creation of it. And they went into business in the summer of 80. And Reagan, I think, was running against it because he's like, hey, we just created this new department. We don't need it. It's not constitutional. We should get rid of it. And here we are all these years later. So the Department of Education, abolish it completely. Department of Energy, abolish it completely. Its charter was to make energy more affordable. Do you think it's succeeded?
I would say there's a lot of things in government, like the Inflation Reduction Act.
Right.
The title is the opposite of the intent.
Right. So energy, education, labor. Why do we have an entire U.S. department devoted to the enforcement of labor law? I would abolish the entire department and create, if you need to, a small division in the U.S. Justice Department and devoted to labor law enforcement. Because every time you have one of these departments, they're fantastically expensive because you have a secretary and an undersecretary and all their principal deputy undersecretaries and all that stuff that goes along with it. So get rid of those three. And then the fourth is HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Arguably totally unconstitutional that you have a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it's expensive and wasteful.
Can I add one?
Yeah.
The Department of Commerce.
That too.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because, I was talking to you before I came on that I'm involved in international trade. It's the anti-commerce department, first of all. Second of all, there's something called anti-dumping, which is the way the government enforces trade in the United States. And it's very corrupt how this goes down. And I'm not saying necessarily bags of cash are getting handed out, but I bet you there are. I mean, I don't have any 8x10s, but if you're a company, like we have Minnesota companies, people in the Republican Party, and they go and they file a anti-dumping lawsuit, and it's a quasi-legal process, and they get an anti-dumping, and they tax some product coming in to protect their own business, and it's very vertical. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm going to protect my business, and then all these people that are on each side of your business get screwed. You make a fortune, and there's, a trade lawyer, a trade analyst, a secretary. There's all these people associated with your case, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these cases. So President Trump just came in and said, hey, guess what? We're just going to put a tariff on everybody. And then that eliminates the need for all those people. I mean, they're just gone. And they just, in the Congress just this week, they voted in the House to revoke President's trade authority vis-a-vis Canada. And why is that? Because when you're in the club, see, this is my thing. We know each other a little bit. I'd like to become closer. I'd like to, you might win. Well, what do I do as a constituent, as a citizen? Remind you, don't sell out when you get there. Because what happens, everybody goes to Congress like you. Every guy who shows up, that I want to be one of the 435, this is not a glamorous thing you're doing. This is grunt work at the grassroots level in a local constituency. It's really the essence of politics. And you have to get elected every 2 years. So the politicking never stops. And somehow they consolidate power. They get control of their local political machine. They push out all the other voices. And then they start representing not the people of their congressional district, but there's moneyed interests in their congressional district, like in an ag economy. And Michelle Fischbach's really big on the ag bill. She's involved in that stuff. And people sell out. They sell out. And I don't know what they get out of it. I mean, I'm not in it, but it seems like people go up to Congress with a net worth of $150,000, and 10 years later, they're worth $30 million. A lot. Am I right? Does that really happen? You notice how Mr. Hughes is a very dialed-in guy on the facts? We have people come in, they have feelings, but they don't have facts. I got to ask you for my own, because I don't have any 8x10 glossies. Do people go, in your opinion or in your knowledge or your experience, do people go into Congress normal, and after a few years they're rich? Does that really happen?
Absolutely. A really good book written about 10 or 12 years ago by Peter Schweitzer. It's spelled like Schweezer is what it looks like on when you look at the spelling, called Throw Them All Out. I recommend you read it if you haven't. It's very dry because it's his account of particular members, bad actors in Congress on both sides of the aisle. He's an equal opportunity basher there. But it goes back to Senator Kerry, Nancy Pelosi, Dennis Hastert, who was Speaker of the House after Newt Gingrich, he ended up resigning in disgrace because for a number of things. But Peter Schweitzer documents how.
You talking about that highway now we're going to talk about that?
Well, he was buying property back in Illinois. County commissioners would say, "Hey, we're going to build something here, so you probably want to buy it before we build it. That way you can sell it and make a big profit." So Schweitzer documents that well, and the book, very dry, but at the end he has recommendations for how to reform all this. And I've campaigned in the past that, hey, if elected to Congress, here's how I would conduct myself, and here's what I would push for in terms of rules under which members of the House and members of the Senate should operate. Just one is the insider trading deal. If you're on the healthcare subcommittee and then you're off buying certain stocks of certain pharmaceutical companies at certain times because you have insider information, Schweitzer said that shouldn't be the case. And so I campaigned in the past and campaign now that the only money that I will have during my entire time in Congress are mutual funds and money market accounts. I won't even own individual stocks or any of that sort of stuff. And the only property you'll ever see me own is my primary residence. I am committed to not buying any property anywhere to avoid these conflicts of interest. And so your question is, do they come in normal and then end up rich? Yes, they do. And that's part of the problem.
Well, that would mean they would be beholden to a machine. They would be dependent on that process to enrich themselves. And that would make them, as you say, conflict of interest with the people they're representing. And we had, on the last podcast, I was talking about 2 Republican Party activists from central Minnesota, not from 7, that I met with this week, and they'd given up, and they're players. And they just said the corruption's so bad, it's never going to end. We're done. And I just thought, okay, because, I'm not controlling. And I think when I say the club, I do believe that we're seeing that is it a club? Is it a cult? Is there rituals of getting into it? Yeah, I think so. But let's leave that to the side. We already left it to a side once this morning. But there is an insider group of people that have networked for their aligned interests to have certain outcomes. And I see those outcomes as the issuance of more and more debt, which makes people more and more dependent on government because they get poorer and poorer. So we're caught in this cycle of dependency. I no longer am going to call them the endless wars. I'm going to call them the unnecessary wars. This endless cycle of dependency and this endless cycle of unnecessary wars that have gone on my entire life. And that group that's in there are profiting from that business model. And that's why they call it political economy. The political economy of the United States is about creating dependency, creating unwellness, because that creates dependency. And then an unnecessary war, there's always another enemy to be afraid of. And that's the group we got in there. And if we could, and people say, well, let's elect Dave Hughes, he'll be one guy. There's still 534 people that are not aligned with your interests. They're not going to say, I'm going to divest myself of all my stocks and bonds. I'm going into money markets and I'm just going to have a residence. They're not going to say that. The reason they're in politics is to enrich themselves. That's why they're there. And this is why I've urged him, give me a second more and then we'll give you the baton back. That's why I urge everybody, okay, we just got done with caucus. Politics is not over. Find out where your local Republican or Democrat committee meets. Every region of the state of Minnesota and the region of this country, and probably in the country if you're outside the country, same thing goes on where you are. There's some kind of political organization that's close to the citizens. In Minnesota, we call them BPOUs. They're associated with Senate districts. Find your Senate district, find the chair, find out when the meetings are, and just go show up. Maybe they'll let you stay there. Sometimes they won't even let you in. But, if you just go as a citizen to watch what they're doing, they will be better at what they do. That's number one. Go to your school board. You don't have to be on school board. Just go and watch. Just the witnessing, the standing in witness will change the arc of history. And, here's a man, Dave Hughes. He's actually, picked up the gauntlet to, do this really intense grassroots politicking in CD7. It's hard work. Just help him. If you're in CD7, meet him. He'll meet you. He's going to have events. Tanner, we're going to put up his campaign website, and how to donate to Dave is going to go up in the notes. You got to get all your socials over to Tanner so we can help you. But when citizens stand up and they do something, regular people, we got to support them. We've got, because the people that are in there don't represent me, and I'm pissed about it. So when you tell me, in your opinion, that these people go in and enrich themselves, does that piss you off?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to go back just for a minute just to complete the thought about, you were asking, where would you start with cutting the government?
Good, please.
I appreciate that you added commerce, because that's 5 of the 15 we could get rid of right away. There's probably, and what I always say is, there's probably some elements in each of those departments, such as the Commerce Department, or, if you go to labor, for instance, there's the Bureau of Labor Statistics within the U.S. Department of Labor. There's some certain functions and certain things that maybe you could retain on a small, reduced, more efficient level. But it's getting rid of those entire departments. But here's the bad news. I want to give you the bad news. If you got rid of those 4 that I mentioned, and maybe commerce as well, the total savings, if you could just abolish them and pretend, or the reality was
de minimis.
Well, yeah, and then you could say, hey, we're saving the American taxpayers this amount of money by looking at, well, what did each one of those spend every year? It adds up to about $300 billion if you throw commerce in there. Here's the bad news, and here's the problem. When we look at Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, they are right now, you've probably heard of these insolvency dates that are out in the future, but they're running cash flow deficits right now. In 2025, Social Security as a program ran a $250 billion deficit in 1 year. That'll pay for the abolition of those 4 or 5 U.S. departments that I mentioned. But all you've done is, okay, we saved here, but now we still have this problem over here. When you look at the entire pie chart of federal spending, analysts divide it into 2 areas. Discretionary spending, which is, hey, how much are we going to spend on the U.S. Department of Education? How much are we going to spend on the military? That's the discretionary side. The non-discretionary side is mandatory spending that they don't.
They call them entitlements, I think.
Right, and some people get upset about that because, you're acting like it's welfare, and I try to stay away from calling it an entitlement because I don't want to upset folks for that reason. But the reason why analysts call it an entitlement is because you're entitled to those benefits legally. And the problem with the entitlement side, the non-discretionary side, is that is right now, David, 70% of all federal spending is on the non-discretionary side, and 90% of the projected growth in federal spending is on that side. And so you don't appropriate those monies. You have no control over those in terms of votes for these 12 appropriation bills.
And where's the interest payments on the debt? Is that discretionary or non-discretionary?
Well, it's non-discretionary because you would default if you don't make those payments.
And those payments are over $1 trillion a year.
Yeah.
So on that $7 trillion budget, $1 trillion and growing by the second is simply interest paid on money that was borrowed or monetized. That's another thing when you start talking about monetary policy. It wasn't all borrowed money. Some of it was just created money, and we still have to pay the interest and pay the money back. To who? Who's getting that money? Where's that money going? See, we're so far from having a republic. We're so caught up in a psyop that we really don't realize how badly we're being abused. We're starting to see, I think the citizens are starting, $20 billion lost here. They just did an audit of the Pentagon. They failed, I think it's 8th audit in a row, the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's $2 trillion missing. Don Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, you can go look at it on YouTube. He goes, well, we're kind of caught up in our anchor chain. We're not really modernized. Our computers don't talk to each other. And by the way, we can't account for $2.3 trillion of money. And then the next day, the plane or whatever it was slammed into the records keeping department of the Pentagon and fried it. I guess it was a coincidence because what do I know? But there's no way to ever track it. And Tanner, do you know if they had put that $2.3 trillion just into an index fund account, something you don't know about because you're too young, it'd be $19 trillion today. So our deficit, instead of being 37 and climbing, 20 trillion would be sliced off of it with the money we made. But somebody got that money. I mean, what I'm saying is it went somewhere. Somebody did invest that money in the index funds, and they got rich personally. But we, the American people, got poorer. So when you go to Congress, okay, here's another thing. How does a wild, I mean, you come across your ideas are, well, our ideas are, we have a lot in common about ideas, but you don't come across as a flamethrower or a bomb thrower or you come across as just kind of a normal guy, right? So you're going to go up to Congress with all these ideas, which are, everybody says them to get elected, and then they go there and they sell out.
Can I stop you for a
Go
second?
ahead.
But not everybody does say them. And let's focus in on this. Michelle Fischbach won in 2020 because the party establishment, and I'll let you guess the names I'm talking about, didn't want me there. And so they gave her the keys to the city. Before, I had always been told, David, when I ran in 16 and 18, when I talked to the National Republican Congressional Committee, NRCC, I talked to them in those 2 cycles. And I said, hey, I'm running. Can you help me? And they said, well, you've got to raise a certain amount of money to show us that you're viable, to show us that you're serious, to show us that you're competitive. Guess how much money Michelle had raised for her 2020 race before she was handed the keys to the city? She was handed a senior consultant, a senior fundraiser, lieutenants of previous members of Congress or members of Congress, a whole team. Here you go. She had done nothing and raised nothing, and yet she was handed this. And here's what I want you to know. Obviously, I know more than almost anybody about what she said in 2020 because I was right there on stage with her every single time and competing with her. She didn't, you said everybody goes to Washington with these big ideas. She had no big ideas in 2020 and has expressed no big ideas since 2020. She's in her 6th year in Congress. And this is why so many delegates, why so many participants and grassroots activists here in Western Minnesota are dissatisfied with her. Not because she's an evil, terrible person or, caught up in some of this stuff, but because she has no big ideas. I mean, she's trumpeting recently some bill that she either sponsored or signed or signed onto of getting whole milk into schools. Now, is that good? Yeah. But is that the big stuff that our republic is hanging on? Is that the thing that's going to cause us to collapse as a society, getting whole milk? Or, the thing that she spent a lot of time and energy on in her time, 21 years in the state Senate, was workforce training programs. She still talks about it. Well, she's been doing that for the last 6 years, talking about getting more federal workforce training programs. Rush Limbaugh famously said that there was something like 7 or 12 or 13 of them already existing across 4 different departments at the federal level. I don't think we need, David. I don't think the Republic is facing urgent matters of workforce training. And yet those are 2 of the things that Michelle Fischbach has been focusing on these last 6 years. And her constituents are sitting here shrugging, bewildered, going, really? We're running massive federal deficits. We're engaged in these never-ending wars or unnecessary wars. We're doing all this stuff. And you're talking about workforce training programs and, whole milk in schools. So I submit to you, she did not go to Congress with big ideas. She doesn't sound the alarm, and that's why I'm running. If she was doing what was necessary, I wouldn't be running right now. I wouldn't be here in your studio. I'm running to sound the alarm about the dire things that are facing the American people that nobody in Washington wants to do.
This is interesting because I think this audience knows these are serious issues. So I'm just going to tell you got to talk to your friends and neighbors. The people go, I don't want to talk about politics. Hey, do you want to be poor? I mean, you want to lose everything you have? Just listen to me for a minute. We're at a moment where if we don't take matters into our own hands, as Mr. Hughes, Dave is doing it. He's saying, hey, I'm doing it. I have to do it. You got some kind of a tug inside you to do it, right? It's spiritual. I know it. You're just not talking about it because it's not a rational decision. If you're not in it for the money,
right?
Why would you do it?
Yeah, no,
unless you had some calling of service and love for God and country, there'd be no reason to do it. And of course, you did say, which I'm going to ask you about in a minute, you're also driven by this right to life issue, which I think is a very critical issue. I want to discuss it. But you, the listener, let us remember the reason the Congress is so bad is because we're bad. The reason the Congress is so corrupt is we're corrupt. The reason the Congress is so dishonest is because we lie to ourselves, let alone lie to each other. We live in a self-governing nation. What do you do to self-govern? Oh, I vote. That's not self-governance. Self-governance is an infinite path of becoming. That's what it is to be a Republican. People go, it's the party. Oh, it's so frustrating. No, Republicanism is a lifestyle. How does the Republican live? Well, let me tell you, up in your district, you got farmers that are really self-governing. They're independent of the system. And what does the Farm Bill seek to do? Create dependency and break them away from their independence. Am I right or am I wrong about that?
No, you're 100% right. To my surprise, when I have been out talking to Republican farmers, I thought that they were all content with being, in the system per se, but most of them say it's bad. I wish it would all go away, with all these protections and all these government programs. I know a farmer near me who is a 5th-generation farmer, and he, because of his experience and his family background on that, he has diversified his locations of where his crops are. He's diversified what he farms so that he's completely outside of the system. He can do it on his own. But unfortunately, most of the farmers are in the system. They need the highly subsidized federal crop insurance, but that sucks them in and makes them dependent on the whole system. And then if you qualify and get that insurance, then the government, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, gets to tell you how to do everything. And you're right. It breeds dependence. Even if the farmer doesn't want it, he feels trapped and lost.
And that now we're getting into the uni party.
Yeah.
Because they can say they're Republican and they can say they're pro-life, but really they're dependent on government. Correct?
Yes.
So they're dependent on their Republican representatives to keep them in business. So that changes the whole nature of the dynamic of what it is to be a Republican. Because you take a constituency and you make them dependent. And now you're dependent on them for votes. You got to deliver the bacon to your home district. So we're trapped. The only thing that works is and I think this was an uplifting thing to hear, I think I heard you say that the farmers are onto this and they'd like to be free of it.
Yes.
Well, how did they get saddled up on it in the first place? What did Colin Peterson have to do with all of that? How did this dependency, I think it goes back to the New Deal.
Yeah.
Actually.
It does.
But what is the mechanism? Because we have a lot of urban viewers that don't really understand like crop insurance and how these farmers get foisted into these systems because it's related to their bank and their ability to get operating loans, I'm sure. So they go to the bank. You tell me if I'm right, because I'm going to guess. They go to the bank, they got to get funding for their operation for this new season. And they have to get insurance or the bank won't lend them any money.
Correct.
And that insurance is a federal program.
Right.
Do I understand this correctly?
Yes.
And
highly subsidized.
And then it all goes on from there.
Right. So, last figure I saw, David, was that the federal crop insurance is subsidized by the taxpayer at a rate of 63%. So, taxpayers are paying for most of the crop insurance. The farmer has to pay for some of it because that's always the case. But it goes all the way back to the New Deal. It goes back to FDR, and it's been the same ever since. And one of the things that is unique to agriculture is this thing called the Farm Bill. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's this big behemoth thing that is supposed to come out every 5 years. They renew it every 5 years. If they don't have it quite ready, they can continue it for another year, reauthorize it. I think they call it for another year or two. But it has something like 14 titles. There's 14 different sections in the Farm Bill. The problem with it is that 80% of the money in the Farm Bill is for SNAP, which is food stamps. Well, what is handing out food to poor folks? What does that have to do with agriculture? Now, obviously, farmers and folks in agriculture produce the food. But the big argument between the Republicans and the Democrats for a long time has been, should SNAP be part of the Farm Bill? And when I used to debate Colin Peterson, and I loved debating him and would debate Michelle if she would debate me, is that SNAP is part of that 14 title Farm Bill. Should it be? I've always argued that you should take it out and put it with Health and Human Services, which is our federal welfare agency. And then you'd have the 13 remaining titles that are much more directly related to agriculture. Peterson's argument was, well, if you do that, SNAP is more interesting to our urban politicians, and the ag stuff is more interesting to the rural politicians. You would have no unity, and you would have none of the other stuff because they're kind of interdependent. And he may be right. You and I were talking about realpolitik earlier. Maybe he's right in the realpolitik sense of things, but it's still not the right thing to do. You should separate SNAP and then deal with those individual things. But there's even a bigger issue, David, which is, why do we have a Farm Bill? I said, what would happen if we didn't have one? And I talked to ag leaders, and they said, well, then our federal laws that are on the books would revert to stuff from back in the 1920s and the 1930s, the whole New Deal era, with FDR. And I said, well, why don't we do the hard work of reforming those laws and fixing those permanently so we don't have to have this big, messy farm bill? And all I heard was crickets. That then gets to the issue that I think, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's wrong with Congress, but I think one of the things that's wrong with Congress is their work cycle. If you're traveling on Monday and traveling on Friday and doing stuff at home in your district for the 7 days of the week, and you're only working on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday doing legislative stuff, no wonder Congress doesn't get anything done. No wonder we end up, at the end of the year in late September with these manufactured annual budget crises and shutting down the government and continuing resolutions and all that nonsense. I think they need to reform how they do business in DC.
I have a suggestion. It's called Zoom.
There you go.
Let's quit going to DC. If all these moneyed interests want to go buy people off, at least let them go to 50 states. Make it harder for them.
Make it harder for them, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Keep people, really, we have a capital, and I get it, but it's so corrupt there. The corruption, and all you have to do, hey, if you want to have a good time and just really blow your mind, take a trip to Washington. Go to the Emerald City and see what's going on there, because it's wealthy. It's crazy. I've been there, and I go, wow, these people. Well, what did we just say? It's one out of almost every $4 in the country routes through Washington. And I told this to Tanner. What does government do? It takes money away from one group of people, gives it to another. And what does the government do? That those government salaries are commissioned. So the more money they move, the bigger the government gets, which is why you want to just truncate the size of government. We see these problems, but the issue is getting people like you into the Congress from all over the country. And people go, well, it's impossible. No, it's possible, but it's dependent on the citizens. Really, this is why we do Free People Radio. It's a little bit like pissing into a strong wind at today. But I don't know what it's going to be like 2 years from now. And I'll tell you another thing for those of you that are interested in republicanism as a lifestyle. You're working out your own salvation. My salvation is mine. Yours is yours. We were talking about redemption before we came on. It's a great path of redemption to not be so self-interested, to actually care about your neighbor and love them as you wish to be loved. These are very positive psychological mechanisms that will make you healthier and better as a person. Love yourself more. There's an old philosophical saying, if I'm not for myself, who will be? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And we're into that part of the equation. Everybody, because when your government is robbing like this, everybody says, well, I'm just going to get rich. It's all about me. And that's where we're at. And you're trying to reverse that. So I'm going to get down to something, and now I'm going to really, we talk. Okay, it's great. People get to know who you are, but now I'm going to get into something serious that I want to investigate. I try to stay away from this pro-life, pro-choice issue myself in the podcast they know I believe in God. And if you really believe in God in the way I do, matters of life and death are not in the hands of humans, that we don't make the decision. Thou shalt not kill is kind of a fundamental in Judeo. Let's leave the Judeo out of it. Christian culture has a fundamental plank, like it's a platform. Mm-hmm. They got 10 planks in the platform. Don't kill people. It's an important idea. And you said that one of your most important issues is right to life. I heard that correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a big deal in the Minnesota Republican Party. How do you advance that? Policy position. We'll call it a policy position. TireGet.com, where convenience meets the road. Why make buying tires complicated? With TireGet.com, it's simple. TireGet.com, one site, a few clicks, and the tires of your choice are shipped to an installer right by your house. When we have it's not hegemonic, but it's close to hegemonic opposition among women. Women are overwhelmingly, in my experience and polling data, and it seems to me to be strongly pro-choice. So the word in the Republic, particularly around here in CD3, pro-life is a losing argument. Can't win in Minnesota, pro-life. Let's talk about it. I want to understand, how will this work? How do you advance it? How do you become a viable candidate? Maybe CD7 is different than CD3. I want to just let you tell me everything there is to know that you can share with me about this, because I'm a political educator and I'm open to hear what you have to say about it.
CD7 is a much different situation than CD3. We're very pro-life. It's a R plus 19 district, which, that number can go up and down with the times. But I mean, even Colin Peterson was a blue dog Democrat and publicly was pro-life. You don't see that anymore in the Democratic Party at all. In the last 30 years, you had governors in the Democratic Party, drummed out of office because they were pro-life. Excuse me. But the bottom line is that issue is not a factor in CD7 in terms of viability. That's what you brought up. So
you're saying in 7,
yeah,
it's a pro-life district.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, then what does that mean to the Minnesota Republican Party?
Well, they have this concept that you can't win the governorship or any of those statewide races or the U.S. Senate seat in Minnesota if you're pro-life. I don't think they're correct about that, but that's their perception. CD7, it's a winning issue, and it happens to be legitimately and fervently my issue. And so, if I make it to Congress, when I make it to Congress, I am developing right now a white paper that we'll make available on my website soon that shows a multi-year, multi-phase approach that's both political in nature, legal in nature, and then using other venues. It has to be a big comprehensive thing because if you just go down the wrong path and try to do it all politically, you'll run into the legal issues with the courts and stuff. So that's why we're developing a comprehensive way to go about it. And I want to be clear with you and with your viewers that there's a kind of a distinction or a schism going on right now on this issue, which is, are you a vanilla, mealy-mouthed pro-lifer, or are you an abolitionist? I'm an abolitionist. Interesting connection here. Michelle's husband is one of the leaders of Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life. And a lot of people have low regard for that organization. They have been for 30 or 40 years ostensibly pro-life. But when you really pin down their political directors and their leadership on why are you telling state legislators to do this and to vote that way, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of Minnesotans as to how committed they actually are to ending abortion. And Michelle's mother is the co-director of National Right to Life. And they seem to have sort of the same attitude. So when the abolitionists say, we want to end abortion in the United States of America, you get pushback from some of these pro-life groups, such as MCCL, National Right to Life. They say, oh, that's unrealistic, or, oh, we can't accomplish that. And so there's suspicions as to their commitment to life.
Oh, I'm not suspicious.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're bureaucracies.
Yeah.
One of the things when you create a wedge issue, I was watching Bill Maher on a clip with Michelle Tafoya, where Michelle Tafoya proudly said, I'm a pro-choice Republican. After all, she goes, after all, let me make clear, I'm a pro-choice Republican. I'm thinking to myself, wow. But Bill Maher said something that was so interesting at the end of the clip, and I forgot to talk about it on the podcast, Tanner, and I meant to. And he said at the end, this was never an issue until the religious right made it an issue after Roe v. Wade, except when their girlfriends got pregnant. Then they got abortions for them. Anyway, everybody laughed. And I thought a lot about why he said that, because I was conscious, alive, and my mother was very involved in politics in 73, not in the Republican Party. So, I knew what was going on. And the reason it wasn't an issue is because the Democrats were pro-life in Minnesota, in CD5, right in St. Paul, which is now the center of radical activism. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was a high number of Catholics living in St. Paul, and they were pro-life and they were Democrats. There was broad bipartisan agreement that abortion was not a cool thing. So I'm not quite sure who made it into a big issue. Maybe it was the resistance to Roe versus Wade. But when he said that there was no conflict about it until after Roe, because everybody thought it was the wrong thing to do. And I was there and I remember that. Like I remember Claude Wilkins, my next door neighbor, who was in 47B as a Democrat with my mother, and he was Catholic, right across the street, and he was intensely pro-life as a Democrat. Well, those people don't exist anymore.
Right.
They're all dead, right? So in CD3, we have a completely different sentiment. You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But it does influence your district because the hierarchy of the party has an outlook about this. And it probably affects how they see you. I'm talking about not 7. I'm talking about statewide.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, like I said earlier, I think the state leadership of the Republican Party is mistaken about this issue. Again, I don't think it affects the 7th, but it affects their marketing and their outlook on these state level candidates. You mentioned earlier the chair Alex Plechash coming out with welcoming and endorsing Michelle Fischbach. I think it was in March of 2025. I went back on social media recently to try to find that post, and it's missing, by the way. And then very recently, he welcomed, I think that's the language in his Facebook post, welcomed Michelle Tafoya to the campaign. I'll be contacting Alex soon to remind him that I announced 3 weeks ago, and I'm still waiting for my welcome to the campaign.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, but yeah, so there's this perception that Tafoya is going to do well because she's this nationally known person, and who cares that she's pro-choice? But I can tell you the grassroots folks are going to stay home. They're not going to vote for that, and they're not going to support her.
No, we want them to come out for other people.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're working for. I mean, this is really an interesting thing. I'm going to have a guy on the show soon named Rod Kern, and Rod's a big banger in the state party, and he met with me last probably like March of 25, and he said we went out to dinner. He invited me out. He said, "Would you please get Royce White not to run for Senate?" And I looked at him and I said, Rod, I don't think you understand the nature of my relationship with Royce. Royce is 6'8", 270. Nobody has any influence on him. Nobody's going to say to him, don't do this. If he wants to do, and people have this notion, and it even pops up on my social media, that I'm his Jewish handler. And it's just preposterous. And I'm going to tell all you assholes out there, Royce is coming, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. He's his own political force of nature. And Rod met with me, and he said he'll never win. And I said, well, why would you say that? Thinking to myself, of course, when you put your thumb on the scale, it's a little bit harder. He said, we're going to get this is before Michelle Tafoya's name, we're going to find a successful businesswoman who's the right age, the right look, and who's pro-choice. And that's what's going to win in Minnesota. And they believe this. And see, you're telling me you don't believe it.
No.
And I don't believe it. So we're going to have Rod on here. And I'm going to send you that podcast by text because I was surprised he was going to come on. I just said to him, because there was this article in the Daily Caller where they said Michelle Tafoya does not have the support of the grassroots like they think she does. And, I sent it to Rod because, I know he was behind this kind of thinking. And we texted, and I said, man, just come on. I'll be respectful. Make the case to all the people that watch this podcast. Why? Because you know what I think? I think they've been plying this trade for 30 years, and all we've done is slide to the left. Where I'm from, what I like about what you're saying is, and why I'm glad to meet you and do this, you're principled. Your policies, you have a knowledge of what's going on in government. You're not just showing up as a personality. You've put your homework in. You have a trained background, but you're not giving into this machine that's saying, we got to do this, we got to do that. Here's another thing, then I'll turn the baton back over to you. I'm watching Morning Joe this morning. I watch Morning Joe every morning. It's called Opposition Research. And they're talking about how terrible the president's poll numbers are, how he's just tanking with everybody. I don't believe it. I don't believe anything they say. They manufacture consent, and then they get the outcome they're seeking. I don't know what people are thinking. How does anybody? There are Republican pollsters that are saying there's problems. I get that. But we don't know what's going to happen between now and November 26th. Every day is like a year. So I'm interested in seeing people like you actually get into politics as a winner, because to make the changes we need in the state, at least we got to have a rally point that we're going to a Republican form of governance, not a communist form. Because I look at this abortion thing, 50% of the people plus one say it's okay. That's not cool with me. 50% of the people plus one say we're going to sell dope. Okay, I'm not okay with that. 50 plus one say we're going to legalize prostitution. I'm not good with that. I mean, when we legalize things because most people are given over to the sin, we've left a Republican form of governance. We've moved to a Democrat, and they say we live in a democracy because it's 50% of the people plus one. No, I want to hold a principle, and I want to figure out a way to talk to people to move them towards the principle. Because the principle, I think, because I have a long life, and I know people are going to say, well, there was discrimination, there was a lot of problems, but life was a lot better for people, even the people that were discriminated against in the 50s and 60s, than it is now. And it's getting worse in a hurry. So this abortion issue or life issue, to me, when you pull a load-bearing member out of a culture, the culture starts to collapse. And that was a load-bearing idea that God controls life and death. It eliminates God from the equation of our country for young people like him. And if you don't have a God that you're responsible to, I guess you're responsible to your civil authorities. That's not America. That is not, would you agree with me? That's not how our country was founded, with that idea that we're ruled by other men, or are we all as men and women responsible to a creator? Going back
Well,
to the right.
No, the latter, definitely. We are a self-governing people. That's what we're supposed to be. I think was it Kane, Senator Kane, who ran with Hillary way back in the day?
Yeah.
He was spouting off in the Senate recently about his bewilderment of the idea that our rights come from God, and other podcasters and influencers have been talking about it ever since. So what are you smoking dope, Senator Kane? I mean, the whole founding of our nation, right there in the Declaration of Independence, is that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. So rights and natural law come from God. They don't come from government. So for people to be confused about this is disheartening and alarming. And absolutely, we are supposed to be a self-governing people. This republic that was set up for us and gifted to us doesn't work for a people that are not self-governing and that are not moral. I think one of our famous founding fathers famously said, "Doesn't work for an immoral people." So
that was John Adams, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And but absolutely. And on the topic of abortion, Roe v. Wade was problematic from the beginning because it was preposterous that there was a constitutional right to abortion in our U.S. Constitution when the word abortion doesn't appear, and there was nothing that talked about it. That's why Roe v. Wade was bad jurisprudence from the beginning. Bill Maher, maybe he was referring to this. Maybe I know for certain other people have responded to it and said, well, we were fine with it as a country for decades, and it was only recently that people started making noise that it was bad jurisprudence. But my argument, and that of many others, is that it was bad from day one, second one. So it needed to be overturned simply on the grounds of bad jurisprudence. But I'm not content, and many millions are not content with this idea that it just goes back to the states and now we're fine with it, because we're not. We still have states in the U.S. where the murder of the unborn is fine legally on paper in those state laws all the way up till the due date and beyond.
Like right here in Minnesota.
Right. And it's funded by the taxpayers and all that other stuff. And I tell you that for tens of millions of Americans, that's an unacceptable situation. And that's why it's such a big issue for me.
And there's another layer of this that I just want to touch on. I remember in 1972, came to school, and there was a new thing going around school, which was the pill. Nobody had ever heard of it. It was like a rumor. And we all had to go back to school, but before we went back, we had to go to our what did they call them? Pediatricians. They weren't family docs. We had to go to our pediatrician. We had to get our vaccinations up, make sure our vaccinations were all up to snuff, and had to get checked. And it was all part of going to school. And we got to school, and like every girl in the school was on the pill for menstrual regulation. I mean, the rumors, this is not something people talk about, kind of leaked out over time. And like by 73, everybody understood that the pill was not really about menstrual regulation. It was about not being worried about the consequences of sexual activity before marriage. And then it just went nuts. I lived through the sexual revolution, and I'm still at my age trying to figure out what all this means, because we lived in a psyop about what sex meant that was part of a liberal progressive ideology, which I believe was meant to weaken our country, to weaken our will, to make us dependent. And I've been given over to this my entire life trying to figure it out now. But there's a very important other part of this, which is maybe we've all just been lied to about this whole idea about sex. Maybe we just don't understand what the hell we're doing. Maybe we're doing it all wrong. As individual people. So, men, we take a look, we go, oh, these women, these liberal white women, just forget about that from my perspective, because I can't stop a liberal white woman from being a liberal white woman. In fact, I've tried. It doesn't work. All I do is become hated. And I don't want to sow division. So, men, what is your personal commitment to your own personal behavior if you're 26 years old? What is our cultural mechanisms around sex? If we really want to deal with this, there's another component, which is individual behavior. And I'm going to say, as someone who has been deeply confused, I'm being frank, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, this whole thing is not right. Just the way we think about it is not right. The way everything is set up is wrong. It's corrupt. It's not correct. So, and even when there is what they call a bastard child, what is that? It's a child. If anybody's been out there trying to have a baby and can't have one, there's something that can stop you from having a baby. You could say it's biology. You could say it's divine. There are people that believe that God is involved in every birth. But to say a child that's born out of wedlock is somehow defective, or that, oh, I had a person, you're going to love this. I had a very senior person in the Republican Party pull me aside, and here's exactly what he said. We have a message for you. He started out by saying, I spent the day with Tom Emmer. We have a message for you. It was personal. Now, I don't know if the message came from Tom Emmer or just from this guy. He could have been making things up as he went along. But I do remember this because it was personal like this. He said, there's two problems here in the Republican Party. Number one, there's too many Christians in the Republican Party in Minnesota. This is someone that's very prominent, okay? And I looked at him and I said, too many Christians? If you pull the Christians out of the party, you don't have a party. And then he just went past that and he said, and further, we need to be strongly supportive of abortion because poor women should not have children. And I looked at this dude and I was stunned because I think that message was given to me by a pretty powerful section or segment of the people that we're dealing with every day. Now, they seldom pop up at that level and are that candid. But I'm calling this bullshit out. And that's what you're dealing with. So when the state party, it's supposed to be 7, but, the state party is already stuck their thumb on the scale. And relative to these organizations like MCCL and National Right to Life, man, if this issue was solved, there'd be no funding.
Exactly. There'd be no paycheck for the folks that are in those
Right.
organizations.
That's so much of when you go into government with the idea of solving problems, that's why they hate Trump. There's other reasons to dislike him. I get it. But one of the reasons they hate him is he wants to solve things. Oh, that's going to tip over some dog balls. Because all this political muckraking, this whole machine is based on division and hatred. I don't want that. That's why I said, I don't want liberal white women to hate me. Man, you see a problem in your country? What are you going to do with your own personal behavior such that abortion is not possible? Does anybody talk that way, or is that just being a... I mean, doesn't that matter?
Oh, it does. Yeah. I don't think politicians talk that way.
Well, then they're not leading.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, we have politics. They say it's downstream of culture, but it is culture. Right now we have a culture of unnecessary wars and massive abuse of the systems of the citizens through robbery. Inflation is robbery.
It is.
Right? That's our system. Well, I'm just urging, if you have this position, I mean, sometimes you have to say the uncomfortable things. I'm saying it. Everybody, I mean, people have to hear this. I mean, there's no abortions if men don't have sex with women that they're not married to. Wow, that's a concept that's hard to hear. And if you do it, are you going to take responsibility for the child that comes and not call it a bastard? It's your child. I mean, we have some personal responsibility issues that are upstream of this argument.
Well, I agree with you entirely. I mean, it's maybe the flip side of the same coin. You've got the public policy stuff on the one side. The famous words from the 14th Amendment, no citizen will be deprived of life, liberty, without the due process of law. I mean, that's sort of whether the 14th should or shouldn't apply necessarily to abortion. I think the sentiment expressed there is obvious. It's self-evident, in my opinion, that no person in the United States of America should be deprived of their life by virtue of law. And that's why I want to abolish abortion as a matter of law. The flip side of that coin, though, is the cultural aspect of it, the heart aspect of it, the personal responsibility aspect of it. And I'm reminded of former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania, I think it was, who years ago, I think when he was running for president, said, look, if you'll simply graduate high school, get a job, and get married before you have children, if you'll just do those three things, statistically, your chances of succeeding in life are vastly higher than if you get that order wrong or don't do those things. That's just common sense, right, David? But he was labeled as a racist and all this other stuff because, oh, you just don't know what it's like in the inner city. Well, yeah, he does know, and I know. We're just laying out the basics.
Oh, these are
graduate high school. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but these are the same people that are saying racist. Here's a racist. These people are so stupid they can't get voter identification cards.
Right.
I mean, this thing, the way these barn doors are swinging, are so disingenuous. And relative to the abortion or pro-life issue, I'm just going to say for the ladies involved, okay, we do have a democratic process and there is votes, and right now it is what it is. Okay. All right. But can we not lie about it? Because my entire adult life, I've heard, oh, it's just an embryo. It's just a blastocyte. It's a clump of cells. When you put a baking pan with bread dough in the oven, you can't eat that. Matter of fact, it'd kill you. But you put it in the oven for a couple hours and you got a gorgeous sourdough bread. You know what's going to happen from when you put it in the oven to when you take it out of the oven. Why do we have to lie about it? This is pissing me off. See, these are the kind of contradictions, the kind of lies we tell ourselves for policy outcomes. I can't live with it. So, ladies, if you want to have abortion is important to you, that's politics. We're going to vote on that. That's okay. I'm going to live by the vote. But could we at least be honest about what we're doing? Like when we say we're sending our warriors off. You spent over 20 years in the military. You know how the military works, right?
Yep.
For good and for ill. We're not spreading democracy. We're defending a dollar empire, in my opinion. So I want to end, and I do this because I did this with Adam Schwartzy. I mean, Adam's a SEAL, and I listened to him. And we have a natural respect for people who served, put their lives in harm's way. We do. I do. But I don't want any more unnecessary wars. So I want to end these last minutes that we have together. You're going to come back because I love talking to you. It's great. What's with the military, and where are you on our military deployments and these wars and the budget of the military? Because if you go to Congress, really, what does Congress do? Congress allocates money for welfare programs and for the welfare that goes to the defense contractors. That's what we're doing right now. That's what Congress is doing. The rest of it is just peripheral. And the budget for the military, according to President Trump, next year is going to be $1.5 trillion. If we're cutting government, where are we going on this issue?
Well, there's three things there. When I first heard that a few weeks ago, this concept of a $1.5 trillion Department of Defense, Department of War budget, I was immediately concerned about that because my bigger overall arching issue is the deficit. So let's add $500 billion to our already gargantuan total federal spending. I would listen to leadership initially on the concept of making the military budget that much larger. I mean, that's a 50% increase, more than 50% increase of what we're currently spending. I would initially listen to it. Why do we need it that big? What do you plan on doing with that money? And then, because here's the thing, as a guy was involved in the military for 30 plus years, my ROTC experience, college, and then active duty experience, and then I'm still a defense contractor today. I'm aware of there's a critical issue, and for all the money that we do spend on the government, David, on the military, there's a critical issue that we've been underfunding for the last 50 years, and that is weapons system recapitalization. The U.S. Air Force is what I know best compared to the Navy, but the U.S. Air Force is still flying the B-52 bomber, which was 750 of them were built in the late 1950s, and we're still flying it today, and we're going to fly it for another 10, 15, 20 years. That's not how it should be. We should have recapitalized our bomber fleet decades ago. Same thing with the KC-135 air refueler, which I flew. It was built in the early 60s and late 60s, and we're still flying it, and we're still planning on flying it. We need to recapitalize those weapon systems, and if we were going to increase our military spending, I would want strong, rock-solid commitments that money is going to weapon system recapitalization, not to you're probably aware that the military spends money on all sorts of things unrelated to the military. Breast cancer research. Why is the military doing research on breast cancer research, for instance, and all sorts of other things, renewable fuels and green, jet fuel and stuff like that. So there'd have to be a firm commitment to the money going to the right place. But hand in hand with that is, then you would have to show me rock solid that we're reducing federal spending elsewhere by 2 to 1. If you're going to spend $500 billion more on the military than you're currently doing, I want to see $1 trillion $1 trillion reduction elsewhere, or I'm not voting for it. So that's the first one. The second one then is, what are we doing with the military? These unnecessary wars. I operated in one of those unnecessary wars. In 1999, Bill Clinton decided that we had to go to war with Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia. And so I was in that. It was a 90-day thing. It was quick. We didn't lose anybody, thank God. But it was all due to a lie. He and Madeleine Halfbright, I call her, our Secretary of State, made up this lie that Milosevic was slaughtering military-aged males of Kosovar Albanians of a certain number. I think she said 3,000 were slaughtered. I don't know what the correct number is, David, but neither me nor anybody in the U.S. military signs up and puts their life on the line to go defend Kosovar Albanian men. That's not why I signed up for the military. So we shouldn't be involved in conflicts like that. I am very distressed about these civilians being slaughtered in Iran right now, but I don't think the U.S. military should put boots on the ground in Iran to rescue the Iranian people. As tragic as that situation is there, that's not why our sons and daughters signed up for the military, to go save the Iranian people from the mullahs. They need to figure that out themselves. And certainly we can help them with back channel and CIA kind of stuff, but I don't want my sons and daughters dying in Iran.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking, okay, knowing something about this Serbian thing, not meaning to put you on the spot, and we can go buy it right to Iran if you want to.
Yeah.
And I like that Halfbright. I never thought of that, because she's actually on 60 Minutes talking about the sanction policies they put in place on Iraq. And Leslie Stahl asked her, if 500,000 Iraqi children died because of and she said, well, it's acceptable.
Right.
I'd do it again. And so this is who these half-bright people are, like, okay, great. But you know what? Hey, in our own country, it's all about, Head Start and taking care. I mean, they're kids. Is there any innocence for these people? Apparently not. And we know the Iraq thing was not what it was advertised as.
Right.
And we know the Iranian thing is not what it's advertised. We know that there's something else going on there, which we'll get to. But do you know why you were really asked to do that? If it was, because those 3,000, I think they were Muslims too, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what was the real deal? Do we know what the real deal was? Why they did that?
I'm just telling you what I was told at the time. If you have a real insight there, I'd be happy to hear it.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, to this day, Serbia is still on the wrong side of the football. I don't know what I'm going to go look at, because there is a reason. That wasn't the reason. That was the excuse, right? God, there's a great movie with God. I'm not going to be able to remember. One of my favorite movies was about that. A pilot had crashed, and he was behind lines, and he was trying to escape. Gene Hackman was in that movie. It's a great Behind Enemy Lines.
I know the one you're talking about.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Can't remember that dude's name that started. It was just a great movie. Anyhow, this Iranian thing, I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with these protesters. They don't care. This is about a 200-year problem in the Middle East called Israel. So when we start talking about military budgets, I'm going to say, which is probably going to shock some of my viewers, I know we're in World War III. We're in it. So maybe the request, when you say you're going to be open to listening, we are in World War III, and it's not overtly kinetic, but it's kinetic in a lot of places. Ask the Venezuelans, ask the Iranians. I mean, we are letting loose our kinetic capabilities at will right now. And it's going to get worse unless it gets better. And what's going to get it better is our foreign policy relative to, do we have an America First concept? Are we changing our force posture around the world? Are we drawn back in from the empire and becoming about America? And these are very controversial topics. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of support any place in the country at this moment, because when it changed, I mean, before Trump came in, this whole America First thing was, we're going to remove ourselves from these foreign entanglements. And while he's doing it in ways that are kind of opaque, because there is a big infrastructure of military contractors and researchers and service members and retired. I mean, he's dealing with a big animal here.
He is. And when I mentioned earlier that I'd be open to listening to the concept of plussing up the military budget, I want to make sure I'm clear with you and your viewers that my natural inclination going forward is to actually decrease the size of the military budget, because I think it's tremendously wasteful. Remember, I was talking earlier about these U.S. departments and how they have this big, expensive bureaucracy. Well, I have the idea that if you were to look at the total, Department of War and its bureaucracy, that you would find that there's a lot of waste there. I mean, one little example that might add up, I haven't crunched the numbers myself, David, but you have a Secretary of Defense, and then you have the services, and each of the services has a military side and a civilian side. The civilian side is called the Secretariat. So you have the Army has a Secretary of the Army, and the Air Force has a Secretary of the Air Force, and so forth. Well, you have your components. So you have the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Secretary of the Air Force, and the Chief of Staff reports to the Secretary. But they have their equivalents on both sides, which seems to me very redundant. So one idea I have, and I'd like to crunch the numbers someday, is what if you got rid of the entire secretariats for each of the services? Just get rid of them. And that way, then the Chief of Staff of the respective services would still report to the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of War. There's no concept there that you would lose civilian leadership of the military. It'd still be totally intact. You just get rid of that bureaucracy.
Well, the other part is who they put in those secretariat positions. I mean,
those are political payoffs.
Yeah, I mean, come on. These people are all going to go right into the defense industry.
Right.
So it's such a big machine.
Yeah.
And we're looking at our own state budget here, which is not part of running for Congress. It was a $68 billion budget, and they're I mean, I don't see any evidence yet, but they're talking regularly like $20 billion got stolen.
Right.
So when you take a $1 trillion budget, there's a lot of slippage in there. And, this again, it's just a human condition. I mean, this part is we're fallen people. I don't steal in my companies. I don't even steal a meal. I mean, because that's me. A lot of people, they own businesses. Every time they go out to eat, they write it off. I don't do that. I guess I could do it, but I don't do it. I don't do it because I'm of an age where you just didn't do that. But I know people do it. But when everybody's stealing. So you get a $1 trillion budget, Maybe 20% of it is just completely robbed. We don't know the number. But if you look at 20 billion on 68 billion, right? Why would it be any different in any of these agencies?
Well, it's not. I mean, 7 trillion is what we're working with at the federal level right now on total federal spending. And I've seen recently people say that easily 1 trillion, if not 2 trillion of that is fraud. I mentioned Medicare earlier. For 20 years, Republicans and Democrats, nobody disagrees with this figure, but they say every single year in Medicare, which spends close to $1 trillion a year, that's their Medicare, Medicaid, about $1 trillion, more than that actually, but at least $100 billion every single year in fraud. Nobody disagrees with that figure.
I'll tell you what's fraud.
Yeah.
Going down to your grocery store. I mean, if you get into the center aisles of a grocery store, you're going to the doctor downstream. You got to stay in the outside aisles. If you don't walk, if you don't work, if you don't have some exercise thing that you love, if you drink like a fish, I mean, you're going to definitely end up dependent on your doctor. We don't teach self-governance and well-being. We teach, here's how you end up in the system. And, this is just corrupt. This is not money corruption. This is ideological corruption. You got to have that first. So, again, going back to the farmers or to the individual citizens, we are corrupt. The people are corrupt. I'm just going to say we have to re-empower, remoralize the people of Minnesota. But it sounds like you got a leg up on CD3, up in CD7. It does sound like that.
CD7 can be and should be the example for the whole state. We need to fix this division that's going on right now. And Michelle Fischbach, if she would exert just the tiniest bit of leadership, she could have stopped all this nonsense, this division where the old guard kicked out Brett Bussman. None of that should have happened.
Well, they're running alternative conventions now, right?
Well, yes, and I hear that they're going to try to somehow merge on April 25th. That's the date of the convention.
They're coming up with a workaround, a solution.
Well, I hear they're trying, but the point I'm trying to make is I witnessed this whole past year, 2025, and all the nonsense that went on. She did not exert any leadership at all. And my commitment, if I am the member of Congress from the 7th Congressional District of Minnesota, is that first of all, I will never hire anybody, any party officer who's currently in the party. If you want to be on my staff, you'll have to quit the other. Michelle Fischbach is doing what Tom Emmer's been doing for a long time, which is that she employs anybody she can get, makes them a paid staffer who is a party elected officer, because then she has her hooks in the party and can control the party. Tom's been doing that forever and is currently doing it. And
yes.
Michelle's doing the same. And my commitment is to be the opposite. You have to pick.
I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
This Broadcorp, he trashed me. And I quit responding to him because I personally think he's pathetic. That's just me. He said he thought I was crazy. And I go, okay, we don't need to talk anymore. Divorce is sometimes okay. But then there's another guy, Brian Strouser. He's the head of the Minnesota Gun Caucus, and he's working on me. And I'm on a Saturday afternoon, and these two and then Dustin Grady, and these people are all crowded around me on a Saturday afternoon, and they're all making fun of me, ridiculing me on X. And then up pops Bobby Benson in the middle of it. And I said, wow, Moby Dick has come to the surface. And I said, Bobby, go back and tell your boss, now I know who's running all these hooligans. So when you say you're not going to hire people from the party, that's a very important commitment to the voters of CD7. I hope they all choke on that up there, because that's the root cause of a lot of evil, I think. My feeling about it.
Yeah. I
think it's wrong. And I think the way the party's being run is wrong. I think their intent is wrong at the top. But beyond that, I think their strategy is wrong. They could be a bunch of debauched idiots. And if they won and the outcome was good, okay, great. You know what? I'm not really happy about who you folks are, but you're winners.
Right.
Okay? And then we'd all sit around and go, we're kind of sellouts. We're so happy we won. We're tolerating this evil. But not only are you people not good, You're not good. It's a double negative. I mean, it's ridiculous. So and how does it work? Well, we're going to find out. We got caucus. Here comes the conventions. Maybe things will change. I should ask you, do you have a sense that there's been enough new people coming into the system in Minnesota to bring about any change to the party through the caucus system?
I have a sense in the 7th that is the case. Remember that in 2024, less than 2 years ago, at the CD7 endorsing convention, Steve Boyd, newcomer, brand new, got 45% of the vote for the endorsement. Michelle Fischbach, sitting member of the U.S. House of Representatives, got 55%.
Couldn't get over the 60.
Couldn't get over the 60. She was denied the party endorsement. I think the strength on the other side is only growing. I think the recent caucus, we still have to evaluate the numbers, but it indicates that there is still a growing discontent among the delegates. And so this endorsing convention will be interesting because
what's the date?
Saturday, April 25th.
Oh, I'm going to follow that. If I don't have a convention down here, where's it going to be up? Where's the?
It's in Marshall, Minnesota.
Maybe I'll
plenty
go.
Of hotels there, and
maybe I'll go.
Yeah,
because what a great news event, Tanner. We might have to go on the road, because really, this is what creates change. Okay, it starts somewhere. Courage is contagious, and I'm going to tell you, Nolan Merle and Carol Hexum, there's some people up there that don't give up.
They don't.
Like Edwin.
Yeah.
Like the Hugheses. And here's something I want to dispel. You've run 3 times. This is your 4th go?
For Congress. I ran for state senate in 22. Yeah.
But I mean, and you haven't won.
Right.
And here's conventional wisdom. You're done. Because, you're building a brand. See, this is another thing. With alternative media, they can't get rid of the rebellion by just quashing us because we lost. Because now there's this alternative media, which you're welcome to come back, and you're building the Dave Hughes brand, and that might take 10 years. It's not you. It's the voters of CD7 that I got to catch up with where you're at. You know what? It's not you. This is something we got to get straight. When the people are promoting principled governance, like I'm not voting for deficits. Okay, that's a pretty important deal. The voters got to catch up with how important that is to them. Maybe in CD7, they have. I hope so, because that could affect CD3.
Well, there's this paradoxical thing going on. You were talking earlier about bullying or something like that. I don't think you used that word. But there was a movie that was made in the last year or two about U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And it's a really good movie. And if you go back and look at the news clip from the day, he faced a lot of obstacles to being confirmed. And somebody interviewed him and said, "Why don't you just withdraw?" And he got kind of weepy and looked like he had a tear in his eye. He said, "I would rather die than allow these bullies to beat me." And that's part of what drives me. There are current leadership in the Republican Party in Minnesota who have verbalized to people, because it's been reported back to me, we just want the Hugheses to quit. Why don't Dave and Amanda Hughes just quit? Well, because the paradox is because you guys are dirty and rotten and cheaters, and you lie and you deceive and you don't play nice. If you would just be decent people, maybe we'd go off and find something else to do. But when you cheat and do what you do, it emboldens us, and that's the paradox, and that's why I'm not going to quit, David.
Here, this is hilarious. At the CD3 endorsing convention in 24, we endorsed, who did we endorse? I think it was Tad Jude to run against Dr. Death Kelly Morrison down here, who would be your congressional delegation. Well, you're not in the same delegation, but you should be in, Minnesota, because she's going to keep winning. And about 2 weeks after the convention, I've never told this story on microphone. There was these new women that had come into SD45. And because my hair was gray and they didn't know who I was, they thought I was part of the establishment. And these people were like radical America Firsters. But, they were in there, they were not young girls. These were older women, my age, and a little bit younger than me. And the party let them into the process because they thought, oh, look at these girls from SD45. Boy, we got some new women to work now. They must be just like us. But actually, they were kind of fire throwers. They were intensely anti-establishment people, and they didn't know what they were doing. And I went to a meeting at a coffee shop with them like 2 weeks after the convention. And they looked at me and they said, we have this huge secret. Can we talk to you? And I said, well, why wouldn't you talk to me? I'm the deputy chair of the board. And then we went through this thing about who I was. Okay, fine. And they said to me, the first thing they ever did politically in their life, the first convention, the first time they showed up, they were chosen by the CD3 hierarchy to be the observers of the count in the count room of the delegate votes for the endorsement of the congressional candidate from CD3. And you know what they told me? They go, they fudged the count. What do we do? They lied in there. The person that got endorsed, it wasn't real. And I said, ladies, the reason you're in there watching is you're supposed to run out of the room with your hair on fire at the convention. But see, they didn't know. That's why they put them in there, I think. And I don't know if what they're saying is true or false because I wasn't there. But it was reported to me. I just went to my caucus and they were counting who was elected as delegate in my caucus room. They didn't announce it. Like we had the vote. Because they put a lot of effort into making sure I wouldn't be a delegate. And they didn't announce the outcome. And I just go, wow, this is, and I don't get pissed off about it anymore. I just figure if we don't get more people in the system, because government and governance is done by who shows up. So if we fail to get people to go and observe these meetings, go to your school board, observe, just sit there. You don't have to be an asshole and criticize these people when they're being watched. Do you go to your county commissioner? Do you know you have county commissioners? Go to the meeting. You don't have to tell them what you think. Just sit there with a notebook and a pen and act like you're writing things down, and these people will be terrified of you. Do you go to your city council meeting? My God, they run through, nobody's there watching what they do. If you go, and that, those simple acts of self-governance. And I'm going to ask you, because we're coming in on 2 hours and we're going to wrap it up soon, to come back. Because we had a better conversation in the, I want to get into that foreign policy conversation. That's very interesting because I think it's very important. But I'm going to ask you, as you're doing this, please urge people to get involved in the process.
Will do.
I mean, please call, because here's another thing. They're going to end the caucus system.
Yeah.
You agree with me?
I do.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to come to people like you, people like me who are political educators. We're going to have to sit down with you and say, okay, you know more about this than I do. If they end the caucus system, what's the workaround? What's our countermeasure? How do we reorganize? I want to start talking about it right now because I know they're going to do it.
And that's a lot of unknown for me. I have acquaintances over in North Dakota, and my impression in North Dakota is that it's this closed top-down system, and that's not what we want in Minnesota.
North Dakota elected Matthew Simon. Have you met Matthew, the chair of the party?
No.
Oh, we had him on the podcast. He's not of the establishment.
Okay.
So right now the establishment is trying to figure out how to choke these people out. But he got up and just popped up to the top, and he brought a whole crew with him of people that are really representing the citizens of North Dakota right across the border. It's really interesting. In fact, Royce is invited up to speak at the North Dakota GOP convention, which is at the end of March. They actually invite, so when they're inviting Royce White up as a keynote speaker, they've veered off the center of the road as far as the establishment is concerned. But I think that this topic, all these topics, I didn't do a great job tonight. I didn't keep it organized. We just had a kind of a stream of consciousness. But I really want you to come back, and you can come in by Zoom because you had to drive down. Did you drive down last night, or did you come down this morning?
Last night.
Okay, so thank you for such an investment of your time to come in. We're going to try to get all your information, get it all to Tanner. But I'd like you to come back every time you're in the cities. And I told Amanda too. Amanda and I had a great podcast. The Hughes are always welcome to come in here. The Hexams who are going to listen, they're always welcome to come in. Steve Boyd's been in. Now, Michelle Bachman's ready to, totally welcome to come here. Noreen's.
Bachman or Fischbach?
Fischbach. Excuse me. Both of them.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Please.
In the summer of 2019, there was there were rumors and whispers that Michelle Fischbach was about to get into the 2020 race. And I was going around the district campaigning, and once in a while I would mention it. Hey, are you hearing this? And people's eyes would light up. And I talked to my wife. I said, if you look at Michelle Fischbach's former state Senate district, the district that she represented, it has its pinky toe in the 7th congressional district. She was mostly in the 6th, I believe, but just barely in the 7th. Because of that, in those 2 cycles, the 16 and 18 cycle, I never saw Michelle Fischbach at anything at CD7. She didn't come to the annual convention. She didn't come to county stuff. Why would she? She was just barely in it. Most of her district was in the 6th. So when I was asking delegates and others involved, hey, what do you think about this rumor of Michelle Fischbach? Their eyes would light up. They'd get all excited, and I didn't understand. I'm like, you shouldn't even know who she is. Why are you getting all excited? What we figured out is Michelle Bachmann, Michelle Fischbach. Michelle Bachmann had run for president of the United States. That's a pretty big, exciting thing. So I think that folks were inadvertently getting.
And the reason I had that brain error is Michelle Bachmann just made a presentation at the Living Word Church this week, and I got all these reports, and some people were very happy with it, but some people were very destabilized or very unhappy with it because she gave a full-throated endorsement of Israel and Zionism and what's going on with Iran. And see, that's a whole thing we can't get into now because we're not going to run out of time. But just to go over a little ways, we've got this Christian population in the Republican Party. I'm sure there's a lot of Christians in CD7. It's an important constituency for you, correct?
Correct.
Are they Zionist or are they America Firsters?
I don't know the number. I don't know the answer to your question, but I would think most of them, some majority is America First.
Okay, so
that doesn't mean that they're anti-Israel. That's an important thing. When I was at the 2024 convention with you, when Royce was endorsed, there was a guy walking around on the convention floor with a sign, and he's of the Republican Jewish Coalition or whatever that group is called. And I asked him a question. I said, "Can I be 100% pro-Israel, pro-Jewish people, but not want to give them money?" And he just quietly shook his head and walked on.
Was he an older dude?
Yes, I think
that's Mark Miller.
Yes.
Yes.
No. This was a different guy.
There's two.
I know Mark Miller.
There's two.
The guy I'm talking about has bright white hair.
Oh yeah, I know him too.
I don't remember.
He actually walked up to me
Uh-huh.
at that convention.
Uh-huh.
I think he's mentally ill. Because he did something. He goes, "Do you go to synagogue?" I go, "No." He said, "That's what I thought. You're not a Jew." And see, the kind of Jews I grew up with, the synagogue he goes to, they said the same thing about him. So we got a whole problem with Jewish identity, about Zionism. It's like I said about young men. If they really wanted to move the needle on this issue, they could take personal responsibility. I'm a man. I'm taking personal responsibility. If I have a child, I'm paying for it. And I did 5 times. But in the Jewish community, we're really screwed up mentally over here. Because we got these people that are pro-Trump and they said they were America Firsters. Well, we see it in the policy. And then people go, well, they blame Trump. Trump is sitting in a chair where he has to have elite capture to get anything done. If there's any fracturing around that elite power that's in Washington, he's done. And you see it happening right now. They just voted to take away his tariff authority on Canada. So, he's in trouble. There's trouble in River City because he's making so much change. He's now, we have senators that are not going to vote for the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is not yet going to get through the Senate because Senator Thune, for example. Well, it's the same suspects. Murkowski up and so you can go to the Congress and you still got to deal with these people over there. This is why, for those of you who are listening to Dave, that are in the party, why I want Royce in the Senate is because he's going to call these people out. We don't have a sufficient level of courage. You were pretty courageous. When I say you're kind of regular about stuff, you're not you just don't get all wound up about it. You just call people out by name and say, hey, you're corrupt. It's really the same thing. For them, the way they hear it, they're hearing the same thing from you they're hearing from me. The exact same thing. So we're a threat to what? Their power. So I want every citizen to get involved in politics and back people that come from the street like a Dave Hughes. I mean, really, who's going to back you? I mean, you got CD7. You got people up there that you have a constituency. You know, you come down here with that pro-life stuff in CD3. Oh, you can't get out of the blocks down here. You know, so I want to try to sort out some of these contradictions. And maybe CD7 is the courage we need. We'll see. We got a convention coming. We're going to see, aren't we?
Well, the good news is when I was the party's nominee in 16 and 18 in particular was the year that President Trump endorsed my campaign, I got support from all over the country. I know you have viewership all over the country and all over the world. So the good news is that folks, like-minded folks, can support my candidacy no matter where they are. I've given money to candidates in other states. So if you like what you're seeing and hearing here, I would ask you to support my campaign.
And I'm going to tell you something else about Dave Hughes, because I know this just from knowing the Hughes family. Most of these campaigns are a giant money machine. You need about, 20% of the money that people say they need. You don't need that much money if you know how to run a campaign.
Right.
What these people do is they over-collect money and they grift it. They pay all their friends and relatives. And, my relatives owns a printing shop. And here's another relative that's going to do my media for me. And they put all these people on the payroll, and all this money gets grifted out. And that's the business of politics. And we really don't need that much money. Dave does not need, he needs just enough. It's like the Three Bears. Not too much, not too little, just right. But most of these, when they said to you, how much money can you raise so that we know you're a viable candidate? What they were really saying was, can you feed the machine for us?
Well, they want you to reach a certain 250,000 was the initial milestone, because then they want you to hire their consultant firms.
Right.
That's all it was.
Can you feed the machine?
And here's the most discouraging thing, and you've never heard this from me before. I physically went to Washington, D.C. and went to RNC headquarters and sat with them. They didn't say, hey, Dave, tell us about your political philosophy. Why are you running? They didn't say, hey, Dave, what are your policy priorities?
Who are you?
No. The first and only question they asked is, how much money have you raised and what's your cash on hand? That's it. That was the end of the meeting.
That's a great place to end the podcast. For all of you that are still here after 2 hours and 5 minutes, that'll tell you who the people are that are running the show. They only care about the cash. That's why they can kill babies. It's the same idea. It's the same ideology. It's materialism. Not who you are, not what you believe, not will you be honest. None of those things matter. What do you got? What you bringing to the table? Like a mafia. Can you earn for us? They just wanted you to earn. Oh, Michelle's a better earner. Because guess what? She's got all these organizations around her through which they can raise money, which is a little strange and a subject for another day. Well, I love ending podcasts like this when I'm saying something that people are just going to not accept. The same political philosophy that says the only thing that matters is the money is the same political philosophy that can kill old people with euthanasia. That's coming right down the... Kelly Morrison down here in CD3, the congresswoman in the House here, or in the Senate here, she was working on euthanasia legislation before she got promoted.
Because old people are expensive, right?
Very expensive. Let's give them an off-ramp. Life is so hard. Just step right on up. Oh, and then they'll get it to the point when people are depressed at Tanner's age. Let's help them too.
Aren't they doing that in Canada already?
Yes, they most certainly are.
Yeah.
And that's what we're dealing with. That Camel's proverbial nose is under the tent. Dave, thank you very much for coming in. We're going to look forward to having you back soon again.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.